Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 296. Now I'm back today with Tom. Tom has got a colossal task on his hands today because all over Christmas and into early January, this show trended at number one worldwide. So Tom, no pressure.
Yeah. No pressure at all.
Because all of the shows were with you not here.
Yeah, thanks for that, man. That makes me feel really good about myself.
It was only because of the topics. That was why the show went to number one.
Yeah.
And people really enjoyed it. I think that's why we try and be as honest as humanly possible on this show because, well, I suppose the fitness industry has inherently been a little bit dishonest over the years, and with the sort of rise of social media and how much we use social media, people revel in the positivity that is social media every day. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of stuff that's negative on social media, but people are very good at painting a picture of how perfect their life is using social media. So, I think it was refreshing for a lot of people to hear different perspectives. And then we had Brian Keane on the show, and he's another podcaster, so that was very well received. And it's good to be back answering people's quandaries.
Yeah. No, I think the podcasts that you did without me, although I wasn't there, were very good. I enjoyed listening to them anyway. So I think, as you say, it makes a big difference in the age of social media to actually hear what real life's like for people that you see all the time. Because, everyone's always known that people on social media portray the best of their life, and it's nice to see the real world for a change.
Let's go off on a tangent because you've just spurred a thought in me, and also over my breakfast this morning, which was the butternut bolonaise from Heat and Eat Lean, which is amazing, by the way. I was watching they'll call it a motivational video, but there's a podcaster, and the owner, I think he was, I don't know if he still is, his name's Tom Bilyeu. He was the owner of Quest Nutrition. Remember when we all used to eat Quest bars, Tom, and then we realised that they didn't actually taste very nice, so we stopped?
Yeah, we stopped lying to ourselves.
Yeah, like, this is really nice. This chemically tasting wedge of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, he has interviewed some great people, and he interviewed I'll probably have to look up his name in a minute. I think it's like Jim Silic. Anyway, he's an American guy. Tom, shut up. That's really noisy. Shh. He interviewed this dude, and he was talking about social media and the positivity and the negativity, and apparently Facebook depression is a thing now. It's coined a term because people are giving so much of their energy and time and sort of I don't know how to coin the word, but how they live their day is lived a lot through social media rather than on their own terms. And he was talking about when you get up in the morning, do not turn on your phone. Govern your day the way that you want to govern your day, rather than sitting in bed, checking all the networks, grabbing an email, getting annoyed by the email. And I thought it was really good. And I want to tie it into, it was a discussion that we were having, Tom, in the BTN community. And you were talking about looking a lot at Jordan Peterson's work of recent. And Stephen Aish, he's been on this podcast before, was talking about him going to one of Jordan Peterson's talks, and he said the biggest thing he brought away from that talk was the fact that people need to appreciate that life is a mixture of light and good, or dark and good, or light and bad, however you want to coin it. There's bad shit and there's good shit, and the sooner you can appreciate that you will have one foot in both sides of the camp, but you have the ability to control how you see, feel and react to both sides of those camps, the quicker you can have just a better level of peace and well-being. Tom, I don't know if you want to freestyle off.
Yeah, so it's one of the things that Jordan does say a lot. I can't remember if he says it on his Maps of Meaning course, but it's to do with accepting that the bad stuff is going to happen, because we seem to be conditioned in the modern world that we're supposed to be happy all the time, and if you're not happy all the time, then there's something wrong. So if you go through a few months where life is really stressful and really difficult, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not living your life in the best way that you possibly can. It's just one of the things that's going to happen. I mean, it's one of the most trite and sort of cheesy statements you can say, but you can't have good without bad, because then you've got nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's useful when you finally sort of get your head around the fact that having shitty days, it just happens, and it's not something to really worry about. As long as you say, you then control your response to them, and you sort of picture things and frame them in the way that you want. It goes back to that Viktor Frankl quote I said on a podcast a few months ago, where it's like, in between, I'm going to butcher this, but it's something like, in between stimulus and reaction, there's the gap, and it's within that gap that you can choose your response, and within that response, you can choose your future, or something like that.
I love that.
And it's, yeah, it just is that the way that you react to stressful situations is going to dictate the outcome of that event. And just kind of letting those things happen as opposed to targeting them head on makes a huge difference. I think there was some neurological study or something, I haven't read the study again. This is from what Jordan Peterson said, so I apologize if he was lying. But he mentions that the brain activity of two people doing the same task is different if one of them has the task forced upon them and one of them approaches the task voluntarily. In the person that the task is forced upon them, it sort of activates the area of the brain associated with fear and apprehension, whereas in the person that approaches the exact same task voluntarily, it's the part of the brain that's associated with exploration and anticipation. So although they're doing the same thing, the second person is obviously going to be picturing that in a more positive light. And really, if you can do that throughout your entire life, it's going to be a lot better. Obviously, that's easier said than done, but it's something to consider and sort of try to aim for, at least on a regular basis.
I was watching that video this morning. I tried to summarise my thoughts in a post on social media, and the post went, "Today you have an opportunity, a beautiful one. It's called A Day in the Life of You. Please don't waste this gift the world gave you with getting caught up in bullshit stuff that simply doesn't matter. Focus on what's important to you and live today in prosperity." And that was kind of like the easiest way that I could get my thoughts together, because what I suppose what I want to challenge people to do is where they feel there is things in their life that they, because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that have been listening to this podcast for a long time. Like, some people are still listening like 5 years on, and high five to you, thank you. But, you know, there's still a lot of people that will be thinking, right, there's areas of my life that I'm still not happy with from a time optimization perspective, an outcome perspective. Like, it's like that time in my life should be richer, it should have a greater experience. And I'd want to raise the question, like, the way that we're approaching and thinking about that time or that situation, could it change? Is our mobile phone dictating the outcome? Like, I know that when I get frustrated and busy, I focus on shit that doesn't matter, because you don't have the objective creativity to stand back and say, right, I realise this, I can see it, I need to ignore all that stuff that is crying for my time, but I need to focus on this really important thing. And I don't, you know, I think I'm better than a lot of people are doing this, but I'm still not amazing at it. And I think if you talk to, you know, people that, you know, work with their mind every day, like Jordan Peterson, that they're studying this day in, day out, they have not nailed it either. They are constantly trying to refine how their brain works, because their brain is still, you know, it's a Neanderthal piece of software. Like, the world around us is being upgraded tenfold every day, every month, every year, and our brain isn't. And our brain is still a Neanderthal chimp brain in a world that's moving really fast around us. So it's a case of like understanding how the brain works. Sometimes cutting yourself some slack, which I think I'm pretty bad at times. I'm not forgiving and kind enough to myself where I feel I want a particular outcome, and actually today I'm just not going to get that outcome, because today perhaps I am just having a bad day, and actually having a bad day today is okay. And I think when you get to a point where you're used to having so many good days, it's like when you have a bad day, you kind of get hit between the eyes between it. And I think especially over the beginning of January in 2018, I've been able to stand back and say to myself, do you know what? Let's just do this, this, and this today, and then I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do the thing. And if I feel good after the gym, because I quite find the gym breaks my routine and it energizes me and it allows me to just chill. If I feel good after that, then I'll go back to the tasks that I want to do. Otherwise, I might say, right, today is a shit day and I'm just going to crack on and do a 10, 12-hour day tomorrow or something like that. And I don't want people to feel they've got to be perfect listening to what me and Tom are saying, that there is this perfect balance. But I do want people to stand back and be objective and say, actually, those little things, am I in control of being able to change those environments?
Yeah, I really like all of that. I mean, as you say, you quite often find that when people are stressed and they're put on the spot, then they just become reactive, and you just sort of, you've got all of this stuff that you need to do, and it almost becomes overwhelming. So instead of, as you say, you sit back and think about it and work it objectively, you just pick the thing that's closest to you and just do that instead. So if you've got all this work on, if you've got all of this life stress, but then something pops up on your phone, you immediately just then go to the phone because it's the thing that's in front of you and it's a thing that you know you can get out of the way quite quickly. Although you are doing something, you're not actually tackling all of this problem and all of this stuff that you've got to do on the periphery.
And you get quickly rewarded.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I listened to a podcast, well, it was one of the Sam Harris podcasts, and he's talking to, it's a ethical engineer, and he's an engineer and he works in like the ethical side of technology. And he says like Facebook and Twitter and a couple of these other like social media sites, they hire psychologists to sort of help with their platform. Because obviously the goal of a social media site is the longer they can keep you scrolling through the feed, the more that they can charge advertisers for adverts. So their primary product, the thing that they want, is for your eyes to be on their screen as much as possible. And that's why, for example, that is why Facebook will send your phone push notifications, because it's constantly prompting you, even though you're doing something else, to come back to Facebook. It's why when you refresh Facebook, there's like a 2-second lag before your notifications refresh. And the guy that's on this podcast likened that to a slot machine, or like a one-arm bandit, where you pull it and you have to wait to see if you're going to be rewarded or not. And he says that's entirely intentional. They do that on purpose. When you wake up, there's always a notification from Facebook, and again, that's done on purpose. It's not an accident. Even if you haven't received a notification during the night, Facebook will give you something, so that it's one of the first things you think about in the morning. So doing that, what you said, where you just wake up and don't turn your phone on for the first hour, could give like a massive amount of your life back, because you're not starting to waste time and waste mental energy on shit that's not actually important, but it just feels like it is in that immediate stage.
Yeah, I never turn my phone on in the morning unless I wake up close to when my girlfriend does. So my girlfriend always wakes up at 7:30, and I might wake up at like 6:45, and I know that if I get up I might wake her. So I then stay in bed and I say, right, I'll tell you what, I'll go and do these 1, 2, 3 tasks, and then when her alarm goes off, I'll get up, but then I'll turn my phone off and I'll start my routine then. But I have to make a commitment to myself that when I turn the phone on, I'm going to do something. Because how often have people gone to their phone to do something and there's been a notification, they've dealt with the notification, then put their phone down, and then they've gone, shit, what was I going to do with my phone? I do that all the time. But, how much time do we lose? It's like I wrote a post on Facebook the other day that most of us go to the toilet now for a poo and we check our phone. And like, how long does a poo now take? Like, really, it should be like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. You drop your load, you wipe, you move on. Hopefully you wash your hands. I don't know, maybe you had a clean bum. But, it now becomes 5, 8, 10 minutes as we check all our notifications. And actually, we see the smartphone potentially as a time-saving mechanism, which it is to a degree. But if you put work into something, you'll get work back. It's like if you went onto your emails and sent 20 emails, you're going to get 10, 15, maybe 20 emails back. You're creating more work. So engaging with something, it's like I quite often get not frustrated with myself, but like if I create something really good that goes on social media, so like a great video or a blog that loads of people read and share, it's great, but I create work for myself. So sometimes I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer there, that I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing because it's great that people are responding well to my message and my work. But we have to consider as people, what do we want to get back from the effort that we're putting in? Is the effort just for ourselves and there's a direct return on our investment, or do we want the time that we're putting into something to lead to a kind of a momentum of having to put more time into it? Because sometimes if we're doing a lot on our phones, we are creating a need for us to go back and have to deal with more and more things that occur. So like, there's not a right or wrong answer there. I just want people to think, do you know what? Maybe there's a few tweaks that I could make. And that's why I like watching these little videos on Facebook, because, you know, I talk about the basic human Neanderthal brain, the chimp brain. Like, I have not hacked that brain, so I have to know how I can go in and like trip him over and then run away. And that's all I'm doing. I'm standing behind him, and I'm getting someone to push him over, and then I run away into the bushes, and then I do what I need to do, because I know how to hardwire my brain. It's like if my brain's getting a little bit tired during my day, I put on music that makes me dance, because I just stand up, I start to bop around, I flow, and then I get into like almost a trance state. You know, and people that do deep and meaningful work, like writers and composers, they talk about a flow state. Well, you've got to ask yourself, how do you get into a flow state? The way I do it will probably be different to the way that Tom does it, but the root outcome is the same. We're trying to, because me and Tom, we do like a lot of writing and creating, so we have to say to ourselves, like, right now, for the next 2 hours or so, I need to be in a state where I can flow and I can write and I can read. So how am I going to do that? And someone might need to spend 10 minutes placing themselves in that flow state through their preferred method. And I think if you can understand how that works for you, then you can get great, meaningful work done.
Yeah. Kind of what you said there sort of reminds us of, I can't remember who said it, but it's the idea that creating a strict schedule for yourself actually creates freedom. So you'll think that if you create a schedule for yourself, oh God, I have to stick to this now, so now I'm sort of hemmed in. But actually, because you are more efficiently using your time, you get your time back. So obviously, within the company that we work in, we're a little bit more flexible on hours, so I have the opportunity to do this. But let's say, for example, I end up in an argument on Facebook and I piss away an hour in the middle of the day. It means that I now finish work an hour later. So although it feels like I've got that little bit of freedom because I haven't scheduled my time, I haven't stuck to my schedule, it's meant that actually the time that I would like to spend doing something else is limited because I've not efficiently used the time that I'd scheduled in to work. So trying to sort of plan out your time, plan out your hours, and then sticking to that really does give you a lot more freedom. I will say, though, as you were saying, there's no right or wrong answer. Arguing on the internet is generally seen as a big time sink, but I actually find it really useful for sort of clarifying my thought processes. So I think there is a lot of benefit to be gotten from debating people and from arguing. Obviously, on the internet, it can be quite difficult to get a sensible debate where people don't just call each other an arsehole and then get blocked. But if you do discuss things with other people in the real world or on Facebook, I don't think that can ever be seen as like a real waste of time. As long as you go into that discussion and when you leave, you've either clarified your thought process or you've learned something, it's not wasted. So, yeah, social media can be sort of a double-edged sword, and sometimes you can feel like you're wasting time on it, but I do think it's got a lot of benefit, especially if, for example, someone such as myself, because I work from home, I don't have people to talk to during the day other than my cat, and his intellectual conversation is not very good. So if you are in that sort of situation, or if you have interests that nobody in your immediate circle shares, it can be useful to shoot the shit with people on social media, because you're able to think a little bit better because you've spoken to somebody else and bounced ideas off of them. So the reason that I'm saying all this is that I'm not a big fan of, but I don't necessarily agree with people when they say that the best thing you can do is to delete social media, because I do think that it does have a lot of benefits, provided you do, as I say, schedule time and use it properly and don't get too suckered into spending an hour on the toilet because you got sidetracked.
Yeah, and then the poo on your bum's dry and you can't wipe it off because you've been there so long. Yeah, anyway, lovely.
Edit that out.
We don't edit anything on this show, Tom. You know that by now. And I think that's when you have to make the decision that I'm happy for my time to almost run away with itself at this point in time. So, you know, if you've got 10 minutes to quickly check in on some stuff at social media at lunchtime, and you say to yourself 10 minutes is your time limit, then it's a bad time to get in an argument on social media. So before recording this, I don't often sit on social media for a long period of time, but I did because I started a pretty cool conversation about learning and coaches that we've all worked with in our community. And for about an hour or so last night, I sat in our community and I was chatting to people and talking about coaching environments. But I'd made the decision to say that, right, I've got an hour tonight where I'm happy to be flexible and engage and talk. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to do that more often because, like you say, I'm in an environment where there's great meaning to that discussion and I'm learning stuff and other people are learning stuff. But I have to be brutal with myself and say that I don't have all the hours in the day to be able to sit around and chat shop, and that's not a bad thing. It's just the reality of we all have jobs and we've got to go to the gym and walk our dog and get the food and do food prep and all the other things that you've got to do with life. I'll tell you one of the tiny little hacks I've started doing again with my time, and I stopped doing it, and I don't really know why I stopped doing it. I think I must have gone on holiday and just got out of the habit or something, but I keep a handwritten diary, and on the left-hand side are all my appointments, and then on the right-hand side are all my to-dos. And I write my to-dos down for that day on the right, and it's just a list, just normal bullet point. And if I think that anything is unachievable that day or it doesn't really need to be done, then I cross it out and move it to another day. But I used to number them. And it was just a simple enough thing that gave me like no anxiety when I opened my diary that day. So otherwise I'd open the diary and go, oh, which task should I choose first? Actually, I've already numbered it, and I numbered it the night before, and now I just go, right, bang, I start with that one. So, like today with my tasks, I know what I've got to do straight away. And, you know, really, you can't be frustrated with yourself then if you run out of time because you still did maybe the 1, 2, 3 important things in your day. And just that tiny little hack takes away also decision-making fatigue. You know, there's a lot of people that talk about we all have a capacity to make certain amount of decisions every day. So how can you streamline your lifestyle so that actually your decision-making process is left and maintained for the most important stuff in your day? That's why people like Mark Zuckerberg wear the same thing every day. They get up, they put on the same colour jeans and t-shirt, and then they rock into the office because they have zero care for using up their creative energy on that decision. And I think that's a really, really interesting, you know, environment and position to be in, especially where you've got, like, you know, you might be a busy parent and your kids are running around, there's loads of things going on, and your brain can easily get tired. And a lot of the time, when we feel stressed and overwhelmed, it's not our bodies that feel tired. Our bodies can handle a ton of stress. It's our brains. So how can we protect our brains more? How can we stop, you know, just little bits of energy being taken away where it's unnecessary, so we have more energy for the things that are necessary and meaningful to us?
Yeah, that's really cool. I actually use that as something with clients who struggle with sleep. Oftentimes when people can't sleep, the main complaint isn't, oh, I'm just not tired or whatever. It's usually, oh, my mind won't stop racing, like I'm thinking about loads of stuff. I often find that just telling people, do you know what, if you've got something you're worried about, write a to-do list for tomorrow, for next week. Just write out these tasks, what it is that you need to achieve, how are you going to achieve it, what are the steps you're going to take, and then close the book. And what that does is, as you say, it allows them to think, right, I've made those decisions. That shit is going to be sorted because I planned how I'm going to sort it. I don't need to think about it now. And I would say it's probably got at least like an 80% success rate for people who can't sleep because their mind's racing, to just mind dump in a constructive sort of scheduling sort of way. And yeah, it just helps people get off to sleep. And then when they wake up, they can deal with the thing that was causing them stress in the first place, which realistically is the only way of actually managing stress in the long term. So it could be quite useful for a whole variety of reasons. And I think people that live the kind of life where you need to schedule stuff, which is basically any adult, if you're not scheduling things, I do think you're quite probably missing a trick.
I think what people need to do is and this is what your little trick is doing, is people need to learn how to put their thought in a box. And the walls of the box is, the strategy that's going to hold that thought together. When I think about my mind keeping me awake, it's quite often regarding a person or a situation where I'm not really convinced or sure how I'm going to deal with that situation. And of course, I then allow my mind to go, well, what if this happens? What if I do this? What if I speak to him in this way? And it's happened before when I've also had big public speaking gigs to go to, and I haven't maybe organised my content as much. And actually, in a positive way, I'm going, I could speak about this, I could do it like this. So the thoughts don't always have to be negative. They can be positive. Your brain could be excited. But it's a great point, Tom, that you just need to say to your brain, do you know what? We'll deal with this tomorrow, but this is how we're going to deal with it. Don't worry about it now. Worry about it tomorrow.
Yeah. And as I say, if you do put some sort of plan together, it helps you do that, because a lot of time when people write diaries, they will write what they're worried about and then that's it. And if anything, that just makes the concerns greater. Or they'll write what they're excited about and then their brain keeps racing. So it's the creating a structure sort of proactively that you can then say, I've dealt with that in as much as I can do so far. Leave it, go to sleep, get prepared, wake up fresh, and then we can action the plan that I've just set out. It might take you 20 minutes, but that's 20 minutes you probably would have spent staring at the ceiling and not sleeping anyway. And then you do have that chance to get the proper sleep that you're going to need in order to action what you've just set out to do.
You made a good point about almost being an adult, and I always I'm always surprised at the amount people plan in their lives, because I do a good handful of internships with myself every month. So people come to my house and we just basically take half a day and we shoot the shit, and I help people on nutrition and business and personal development, all sorts of stuff. And I always take people into my home office and I show them, I'm like, this is what my home office is. And people just stand there and they're like, wow, and they just stand there, like mouth open, like reading all these different things. And I'm not going to say to you that my office is somehow amazing and there's like statues from the Far East there and really cool stuff there. But I'm a planner. I plan for everything. So there's a wall planner for my time. There's a weekly planner. There's a planner for what our business is doing. There's a planner for what I want to do. There's a planner for me to remind myself to check in with people. I literally plan everything because I have a Neanderthal brain, just like everyone else. And I will forget things and I will drop into a pattern and I will just do things, and then I'll get to the end of the week and go, shit, I didn't do that because I just didn't even look at my whiteboard. And one of the first things I get back from people, and they're like, oh, I've bought a whiteboard and I've been doing this and I've been doing that and I'm getting so much more done. It seems a little bit amazing that people have not said to themselves, I wonder if I just write a few more things down and just plan my week and then don't do that. And I'm just always amazed at the lack of planning sometimes in a lot of people's environments, because if you don't plan for it, it doesn't get done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm less organised than you, but I've got 2 notepads there. I've got a board that's covered in sticky notes. But even just little things like, I think I've spoken about this before, just to focus this podcast a little bit on nutrition anyway. Me and Em, we plan our weekly food. So we plan out what Em's going to have for lunch, what I'm going to have for lunch, and then what we're going to have for dinner every night. And that goes on the wall on a Thursday, because we do our shopping on Friday. It means that we buy everything so that we're always prepared for that. And it means that halfway through the week when we're tired, we don't have to think about what we want for tea. It's there. And then we can just go and eat that. We'll know it'll be nice because we've thought about it beforehand. We know it's going to be nutritionally valuable because we've thought about it beforehand. But it means we don't have to worry about it. And it takes that entire decisional process out of our day. It means that we can do something else.
I think where people fall foul, and don't get me wrong, I hear people on this, is that we often get to the weekend and people do just want to chill. They want to turn off, watch TV, have a drink, all that kind of stuff, and that's awesome. But 1 or maybe 2 of those hours, you've got to say to yourself, nah, I'm not watching TV. I've got to plan my training. I've got to plan my food shop. I've got to plan my week. I've got to plan for what's coming up. Because if you don't, your week coming up is going to run away from you again. And Tom, I've become a lot more stringent with my planning of my training sessions. And actually, it's taken me a little bit longer and it's taken more time out of my day to plan. But my training is actually more effective when I get into the session and I'm doing less fannying about. And it sounds silly that why would I not plan? But I have quite a creative brain, so I like to try different things and I like to play around. So what I've done is I've not made that completely spontaneous, but I've allowed myself room to play within a session, but there is still structure to that amount of play. So that play block might just be like 10 minutes. Right, for 10 minutes, I'm going to pick a piece of cardio equipment and 3 exercises, and I'm going to do it back to back for a solid 10 minutes, and I'm going to work my ass off. And that might be my element of play, whereas beforehand, I wasn't planning that properly. So it might take me 2, 3, 4 minutes to set it up, and then I'm thinking about it, and then I'm resting too long. Like, you just get in and get it done. So, you know, from this discussion that we're having now, people listening, like, what could we just plan a little bit more with? And it sometimes planning sounds a little bit boring and a little bit adult, but like Tom says, structure is freedom. And when you know where your time's going and what you've got to do with that time, when you're in that moment, then there is freedom because you just enjoy and you go through the process of that moment that you've set out for yourself.
Yeah, you often find as well that people that don't, just going back to the food point, people that don't plan their food, and we used to do this all the time, is you end up rotating like 10 meals because you just eat the same shit all the time because you haven't thought about it. So when you get to the supermarket, you're like, oh, I'll just buy what we bought last time, maybe with like a few extra little bits. And then it gets to the evening, everyone's been at work, everyone's tired, it's getting late, and you think, oh, we'll just make that thing that we made a few days ago because that was tasty. And you just get into this routine of eating the same stuff all the time, and it becomes really repetitive and boring. So, I mean, we've said on this podcast before, I'm not a foodie, and I know you're not either, but it's still nice to sort of not just eat the same, I'm going to have some chicken, and then I'll make some homemade chips, and just eat the same sort of functional meals all the time. So we try to try a new recipe at least every 2 weeks. And that doesn't sound like much, but over the year, that's 26 new meals that we've learned to cook. Over the course of a few years, all of a sudden, you've got a big-ass recipe book sat on the shelf that you can then play with.
And that you know, and that you can almost just go onto autopilot a little bit and just knock it out. And then when it comes to, you know, having friends over and have a bit of a dinner party, you can flick through that and go, oh, that's amazing, we've eaten that. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, shit. And you're almost like, what shall we cook? There's so much good things. But quite often when it gets to the weekend and we cook for friends, I know we've done it in the past. We've cooked like the same 4 meals like in a row, and luckily we've had different friends come round so they haven't been exposed to the same meal. But again, we've got caught in a pattern because we've been bad at planning for the potential outcome, and we haven't challenged ourselves to, you know, do something a little bit different.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how much more you get done when you plan.
It is. Tom, we had a load of questions set out for this show, but we'll do it next time. I'm going to leave the podcast there. I'm happy with this podcast.
Yeah, I think we've said something useful and haven't rambled too much. So
no. So hopefully you've taken some cool stuff away from this podcast. It's made you think about planning and the outcomes that you're getting and the way that you spend your time. And maybe could we turn, you know, your phone off a little bit more? You know, with social media as well, we can choose a bit more about what we view as well. Like if you go onto your Instagram profile and you feel that you can't keep up, or there's too much to take in, or you need to go in multiple times a day to almost see everything. Well, everything that you're currently following, do you need to see it all? Like, think of all the people that you follow on Instagram, because we just find things and we add and follow. Could you go in and unfollow some people? Could you go in and set up notifications on the people that you actually want to hear from? So let's say there's your 10 favourite nutrition people. Could you set up notifications so you don't actually miss that stuff? There's a couple of people that I really like to read their stuff, so I have a notification set up so that when I go in, I see it. Either way, there's a hack if we're willing to stand back and see what it is that we need to change and work objectively towards it. It doesn't mean it will change within a week or two. It might be something that you need to practice and needs a little bit of habit, embedded in. And this is something that the brain, I think, constantly needs work on more than the body. I think the brain needs to constantly be told what to do because it has Neanderthal tendencies. It has, I describe it as a task-orientated desire. Like the brain wants to get up and just say, right, I've been told to do this, right, go and do this. Done, tick it off, little dopamine fix, feel happy, feel like I've done something. It's like going out to find food, like as a hunter-gatherer, like, right, I need to eat, I go out, I find food, I tick off, more than one things from the to-do list almost. And I think if we can keep trying to hack that, we can keep living in a bit more mental freedom.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you say there. It's if you do something and it gives you that little hit of dopamine, then it can create a habit, and that is neurologically wired in. So the little area in your brain that causes you to check Facebook, that's a physical change that's happened in your brain, and it's there. And the thing is, when we are, say you just looked at your phone, you see you've got a notification, that physiological habit that is built into your brain can effectively overpower the part of your brain that does all of the cognitive things. So it can become very, very tempting and very, very difficult to resist that temptation. So what can be quite useful is to just remove those temptations. Like I've got Facebook blocked on my computer. It's a blocked website. I can't access it. And what that does is it allows me to work like more like stringently, I suppose would be the word. And then I can only check social media on my phone because I know what I'm like. If I get that little box that pops up in the top right-hand corner of my screen and says that I've been tagged in something, I will check it immediately regardless of what I'm doing. So I've just got rid of that. Getting rid of the temptations can make it a lot easier.
Definitely. Right, let's wrap up this show. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have and you've never left a review for the show, please leave us a review. That would be amazing. Thank you. If you see it on social media, give it a share. Tag someone in that you think, do you know what? I think my mate Dave could really do with listening to the show. Then tag him in, share it. A few updates from our end. We've got the Kaizen event on the 25th of February. So if you want to come and learn for a day on all things human movement, nutrition, business, loads of stuff, then check it out. It's the kaizenproject.co.uk. The Body Type Nutrition Foundation Academy is now an AFN certified nutrition course. Well done, Tom. I say that because Tom's been working really hard on this over the last year. It's been tough. Like doing this kind of thing for a nutrition course is really tough, but we're there. So that basically means that our course is externally verified as an education provider, which is now the gold standard in the industry, AFN. So if you're looking for nutrition education, then please do check out the BTN Academy. The Foundation Academy you can now start at any time from anywhere in the world. So there's no course start dates. You can now start it whenever you want. The Practical Academy is still a course that has 2 intake dates a year. And then we have now the Business Academy, which is full of modules that you can take anytime, anywhere in the world. But that's really the updates from me. Kaizen event coming up, the BTN Academy, and Fat Loss for Life, my coaching program. Again, that's something you can start at any time, anywhere in the world if you want to be coached personally by me for 90 days. Anyway, Tom, we're off ski.
We're off. Cheers, everyone.
Toot toot. Actually, when this podcast goes live, I will be snowboarding. Woo-hoo!
I won't.
I didn't really take any time off in December. I had 3 days off at Christmas. So I'm now taking a holiday. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. Me and Tom will be back very soon. Stay awesome. Goodbye. Everyone, Vancouver Radio, episode number 295.